This is Joshua, part 3 of 3. This is the part that's going to wrap everything up on the proper placement of his wave sheaf coming into Canaan. It's really actually quite a fun study, and lots of learning about history. We'll be looking a little bit at some Pentecost counting as well. Again, it's at the year about 1451 BC, long before the calendar got switched at Hezekiah's timing of moving from the 360 days per year to what we have today. Now, you might be wondering what in the world is on this slide for Yah's covenant calendar with error and wave sheaf and Rabbi Rashbi, what's going on there? So just hang on. There's going to be some interesting things that are happening. So in wave sheaf part number 3, we said that we were going to be looking for the correct method of counting the Omer. How is that determined? And also a really interesting part on what is the tradition of how wave sheaf became married to Abib 16 anyway. How did that ever happen? How did people ever get it mixed up? Because it's so easy when you actually look at what Joshua has to say, and it's not too hard to figure it out. So this is going to be the final disclosure of this part 3. We've already done part 1 and 2 with Leviticus and Numbers and looking into Joshua. And in part 3, we're going to be looking at some history there towards the end of the study. And Joshua does have more information of wave sheaf and Omer counting. But most of all, what I hope that you're going to be interested to see is that there is a statement on a historical aspect from a Hebrew Union College in the USA. We're going to look at that as well. It's always good to see what the secular historical documents have to say. Sometimes they align with Torah and sometimes they don't. And yes, again, Tim will be helping me teach this study. So we need to be aware of any error that gives honor to Abib 16 as wave sheaf every single year. Yes, I'm saying beware and be aware. A wave sheaf festival that is married to Abib 16 has absolutely no scriptural foundation. And you also need to be aware of any suggestions that say permission to eat the grain was not in effect until Abib 16. You need to be aware of that as well. And if there were the case that this suggestion would be, let me start that over. If that were the case, this suggestion would eliminate the word usage of the same day. And why is that? Because Israel was given permission to eat the grain of the land on the same day. The grain was used for the wave sheaf offering. And yes, indeed, that grain was harvested, it was threshed, it was ground, it was baked for unleavened bread that day so that they could actually have unleavened bread for the first time. Now, they didn't really celebrate in the wilderness the Passover too much because they didn't have these items. So yes, understanding wave sheaf is really important. It's the most important, I think, in the Joshua study, although he does point out a lot of other things as well. So we want to be aware of these errors. And Tim, would you just do some reviews? This is review number 11 that is in this series. Would you go ahead and take this slide?
Joshua confirms. He confirms celebrating wave sheaf has priority before honoring the first Shabbat of unleavened bread. It is way more significant because wave sheaf is a prophecy given about 1,500 years in advance of when Yahusha would ascend heavenward. So again, this is an identification system from 1,500 years prior of who our Mashiach is. Yahuwah has given this, so we make no mistake. The celebration of wave sheaf should never be a forgotten festival. And I just read an article the other day, and it was from the ministry Shema Yisrael. And they were declaring that the wave sheaf is not a festival in unleavened bread, that it is a false doctrine to teach that it is a festival that needs to be observed. This was in their announcement. Of course, this is a lunar system of worship. I was shocked, and well, I read the whole article there, and I just could not believe what I was reading. But this is part of it. Is the wave sheaf valid or not? Did Yahusha observe the wave sheaf or not? Question. When Abib 15 and the H7676 Shabbat share the same date, which Shabbat has priority? Very good question.
Absolutely. We didn't answer that question, but it is a good question. And maybe at the end of this study, everybody will know the answer because they'll have figured it out for themselves. Well, there are many that honor the feasts and festivals, and they understand the placement of wave sheaf is always and only on Abib 16. That is not a surprise. In other words, when wave sheaf is married to Abib 16, then it's going to float on any day of the week from year to year. And why is this a problem? Well, I think you already might remember, but reviewing two of the reasons, by statute, the wave sheaf must follow the weekly Sabbath every single year. And it's not possible for Abib 16 to follow the weekly Sabbath every single year. That's just not a possibility. The correct prophetic day of the week, it's a prophetic day as specified for the wave sheaf festival of our Messiah's first ascension, is completely obliterated when you tie it to Abib 16. And for all those years that the Israelites were there, were they actually practicing foolishness, to do what they were supposed to be doing? Well, another Abib 16 floating wave sheaf, there's another problem that needs to be addressed. We're going to look at that in category 3. When the wave sheaf is placed on Abib 16, following the high Sabbath, the first Sabbath of unleavened bread is the high Sabbath, then the counting of the Omer will not be accurate and it will not be correct. And as a result, the Pentecost festival is going to be seriously misplaced. And that's a pretty big date as well. There are instructions for counting the Omer. It's easy to find in Leviticus 23, 15 to 16. It says, and you shall count for yourselves from the day after the Shabbat with the 7676, you're going to count from that day after, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be completed. You count 50 days to the day after the 7th Shabbat, and then you shall offer a new grain offering to Yahuwah. So for some of you that are new, this is a very easy count, and we've done a lot of work on Pentecost and some other studies. But Pentecost can only follow also a 7th day Shabbat, the weekly Shabbat. Guess why? Because there are no other annual Shabbats. There are no other holy convocations, even close to this point in time, for the 50th cycle to follow after. There's only weekly Shabbats. So the next set of charts are going to illustrate this problem and the solution. Abib 14th Passover in these charts is going to be placed on the 7th day Sabbath as seen in the book of Joshua. And Tim's going to take us through some of this counting of the Omer. I'll try to follow him here with the animation. So Tim, let's learn to count to 50.
The Feast of First Fruits, the problem of a floating wave sheaf on Abib 16 and the Omer count. So let's have a close look at this. This is ultra important. Counting the Omer from Abib 16 wave sheaf. Okay, on the right, we see Passover, Abib 14 in red. And we see the acclaimed Abib 16 wave sheaf in green. Count from Abib 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to see Tim standing on a stage in front of you. He does 5 backflips and 5 cartwheels across the stage. Do I get your attention? Is Yahuwah a person or a God that says, do as I do and not as I say? Okay, why do I ask this? What happened in the manna week? When Yahuwah gave the test to the Israelites and said he wanted them to pick manna for 6 days so that they could have a completed Sabbath, did he give them 5 days of picking manna? No, he gave them a completed week. They had to pick manna for 6 days before the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, could give a complete week before it could cap off the week. What does this have to do with the wave sheaf on the 16th? Look at this chart. Okay, is there 6 completed days of work in this work week? Does the seventh day Sabbath complete a week? How come there's only 5 days in this week? This is not a completed week. If I read to you Leviticus 23:16, it says, "And from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourselves 7 completed Shabbatot." This first week you see here is not completed. That wave sheaf being placed on the 16th, which is a first cycle, does not give us a completed week. This is Enoch, people. This is part of his calendar, and this is a false doctrine. It does not give you a completed week. So we go down to the next week. There we see the 6 working days with the green arrow, and that leads to the 28th, which is a seventh day Sabbath. That gives you your first completed week. What happened to the days before? What are they? They are incomplete, and Yahuwah asked for a completed week.
I just need to make a little correction there, Tim. This is not Enoch, this one, because this wave sheaf is on a Monday, the 16th. You happened to say Enoch. I think you just got a little bit confused, but this is a lunar Sabbath. Enoch has their wave sheaf on the first day of the week. It's just usually on the 26th. But let's take it to the next slide, Tim. And we're going to start counting these weeks to see how we can find 7 completed weeks. So go ahead.
Thank you for correcting me, because I do get excited and mixed up. There's no question of that. Okay, here we see our 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th completed weeks. The seventh day Sabbath was able to complete and cap off the 6 days in the work week. What's after that 6th completed week? If we look on the left, we see number 4. That is the first cycle of the week. And then number 5, the second cycle of the week, which is number 50 of that Omer count. Is that a completed week? How come there's only 1 day in that week? What happens when you place the wave sheaf not according to the scriptural demands? You do not get your completed weeks. This 50th day does not follow a H7676 weekly Shabbat. It follows the first day of the week that has not fulfilled the statute of Leviticus 23:16. Problems. Only 6 completed Omer weeks. This method does not fulfill the scriptures requirements of Leviticus 23:15-16. This Omer count is incorrect. And what about that 18, that number 18, the 33rd day? Can anyone please look at that and note the 33rd? What is with that 33rd? I'm not going to tell you right now, but I suspect some of you have a good idea already. We're going to look at that farther on. The 33rd day. Where is this going? The Feast of First Fruits. Proper placement of the wave sheaf solves the Omer count. What does Scripture have to say? And let's follow it. On the right, Abib 14, Passover in red. On the left, Abib 15, wave sheaf day following the 7th day Sabbath as per Torah. Is this going to give us a first week, a completed week? Does that 7th day Sabbath top off, cap off, and complete the first week? Absolutely it does. Then there's your second week, your second completed week. We have 2 completed Omer weeks in Abib. Let's go on to the next one and find out where that number 50 ends up. So here we are. We see the arrows going across. There is your 3rd, your 4th, your 5th, and your 6th, and your 7th completed weeks. The 7th-day Sabbath has been allowed to do its function, its commission. They are completed weeks. Where does that number 50 come to? Number 50 follows the 7th-day Sabbath. The 49th day was on the 7th-day Sabbath, the number 50 on the first day of the week. There is your 7 perfect completed Omer weeks. That is the covenant calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Joshua confirms when wave sheaf follows H7676, the weekly Shabbat, and begins the Omer count on number 1 day of the week, there will be 7 perfect completed weeks to the 50th day of Pentecost. Yahuwah requires completed weeks. He does not want half weeks, quarter weeks, or 10th weeks. He wants full, complete weeks. Does Pentecost have anything to do with H7676?
Well, it sure sounds like it to me that Pentecost is right snugged up to the weekly Sabbath. And that's what we learned in Joshua with the wave sheep. Well, let's go back to this very important note here. We were looking at this in part 2, where Passover is on a Sabbath. It is on the 7676 weekly Sabbath, and wave sheaf follows. And this is the sample calendar year for Joshua. But many feast camps, they place wave sheaf following the unleavened bread Sabbath on Abib 16 every year. That would have been over here. But the Torah instructions and Joshua's testimony show that wave sheaf always follows the weekly Sabbath within the Passover festival, not the unleavened bread Sabbath. Now, why did I say within? Because Enoch doesn't keep wave sheep within the Passover festival. And that was shown by using the number, the Hebrew word number 7676, to identify that weekly Sabbath. So the question is, if we didn't have these numbers, how would we know that wave sheep doesn't follow the unleavened bread Sabbath? What if we didn't have those numbers? Is there a way that we could figure it out? Because we did say those numbers are man-made. Well, there are Torah instructions for Pentecost without the Hebrew numbers. In Leviticus 23:11 for wave sheaf, it says, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah for your acceptance on the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest waves it. And note that this Sabbath could be understood to follow the unleavened bread feast Sabbath if there was no Hebrew. That is possible, completely possible. But let's look at the scriptures for Pentecost, because this is where it's going to have a little bit more clarity. It says in Leviticus 23:15-16, and you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the wave sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Even until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall you number 50 days, and you shall offer a new meat offering unto Yahuwah. So the note here is really pretty simple. You've probably figured it out already. Can this Pentecost Sabbath be understood to follow a feast Sabbath if there were no Hebrew numbers to designate it as a weekly Sabbath in verse 6? Just think about it. Is it even possible? Well, you know what? The answer is no, it's not even possible, because there are no feast Sabbaths in the 3rd month. When the Omer count begins with an Abib 16 wave sheaf date, Pentecost will not follow the weekly Sabbath the way Leviticus 23 designates. It just isn't going to happen, unless, of course, that one year where things are going to work out no matter what. And it's usually about 6 out of 7 years that it is impossible for a Pentecost count from Abib 16 to follow the weekly Sabbath. It isn't even possible. It's just looking at calendar to figure out what's going on. Just want to back up just one more slide. I do want you to take note of this day 18. It's the 33rd day of the Omer count, because that's going to become very important pretty quick. So back to some very important notes. This wave sheaf instruction, it says on the morrow after the Sabbath, and Pentecost says that it has to be the morrow after the 7th Sabbath. And we know that there are no feast Sabbaths in there that you can actually count. There's none. You can't manufacture them. There's just none of them there. So both the wave sheaf and Pentecost have to follow a weekly Sabbath every single year. And that's the end of that. It's just that easy. Well, we're going to get into this third witness, and maybe it will settle a lot of the challenge of wave sheaf placement. This wave sheaf placement of being married to Abib 16. Will the historical research have something there that will clue us into what's going on? Did you even know that there was history around Abib 16? You don't know until you start going and searching and looking around. This unscriptural traditional command of wave sheaf on Abib 16, just a little bit of a review. If anybody has been late or missed the first 2 sessions, the truth is that wave sheaf is always celebrated on the morrow after the weekly Sabbath, and it has to be during the spring festival. This is day 1 for counting the Omer. And Omer means sheaf. It is the command for cutting the Omer that originates in Leviticus 23. It is a mitzvah. It is a commandment to count the Omer for the 7 completed weeks between the wave sheaf and the Pentecost. And all it is counting 1 to 50. That's what you have to know how to do. But there is a strong tradition out there that says the wave sheaf festival is always fixed to a Abib 16 date. And in that case, it's going to be a floating wave sheaf First Fruits Festival. It will float on any day of the week. So the brand new information in this part of the study is counting the Omer according to the Jewish tradition. We're going to have Tim come in and help us with some of the rest of these slides on what this Jewish tradition is all about, because it does lead the way, and it is a very strong teaching out there.
The Jewish tradition leads the way. The Jewish Omer count from wave sheaf to Pentecost always begins on the 3rd day of the Passover spring festival. Wave sheaf always follows the first Shabbat of unleavened bread, with celebrations on Abib 16. There are also a series of restrictions that arise during the period of the counting of the Omer up until Lag BaOmer, which translates as, yes, the 33rd day in the count of the Omer. The tradition is to mourn the first 33 days until the 34th day in the morning. For the Jews, a large portion of the 7-week counting period is considered a mourning period that ends with Lag BaOmer. What is Lag BaOmer? Lag BaOmer is a minor Jewish holiday that falls between the festivals of Passover and Pentecost. In Jewish tradition, the 33rd day of the Omer count is regarded as a holiday that commemorates the death of who? Rashbi, or Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and he lived from 80 to 160 AD. Why is it commemorating him? What is the purpose? Do we find this written in the scriptures? Lag BaOmer. The Hebrew letters may be used to express numbers. Lag is a combination of 2 Hebrew letters, Lamed and Gimel. The word lag is an acronym for 33, and it is derived from lamed, which is 30, and gimel, which is 3. The phrase lag ba'omer indicates the 33rd day of the Omer count. This day is always celebrated on the 18th day of the second month on the Jewish calendar. So, what is the connection with 33 and the 18th?
Well, who is this Rabbi, Shimon Bar Yochai? We should find out a little bit about who this man is. He's known as Rashbi. He lived from 80 to 160 AD. He was a disciple of Rabbi Akiva, who lived from 50 to 135 AD. Please take note of these dates. And this Rashbi is the author of the Zohar, the most famous book of the Kabbalah. And if that doesn't put up a red flag, I hope it does now. Many Jews have witnessed miracles of all kinds after praying at his holy gravesite. Well, as the story goes, on the day of Rashbi's death, he revealed the mystical dimension of the Torah known as the Kabbalah. It was a form of Jewish mysticism. Oh my goodness, I hope Kabbalah makes you think a little bit deeper. Rashbi has a connection to Lag BaOmer. Let's look and see what it could be all about. The day of his death happened to be the 33rd day of the Omer count, and every anniversary celebrates this hidden Torah, or the anniversary of the revelation of Kabbalah. This Jewish holiday holds equal importance to Pentecost, and they actually believe that Pentecost was where the written law was given to Moses. The giving of the law from Sinai was written down on stone at that time. They hold this 33rd day as equal with Pentecost. There's a lot of things that happen on this day. Celebrations are held in the village of Meron near Israel at Rashbi's supposed burial site. In fact, hundreds of thousands of Jews gather at Mount Meron to pray and celebrate Kabbalah. Now, what kind of Jews are they? Are these believing Jews? You have to ask that question too. Many bonfires are lit at sunset on the 32nd, because that's where they start their day of the 33rd day of the Omer count. They light their bonfires on the sunset of the 32nd, and then they start to commemorate the death of Rashbi. So sunset comes and it enters into this whole equation. Well, what is Rashbi's connection to the year 2015? I didn't take the time to chart this out for the year 2021. So we'll use 2015 because it's going to work every single year. We're going to investigate the connection of Lag BaOmer, or Omer count number 33, in comparison to this 2015. But I want you to know what happened worldwide as well as in Israel during the year 2015. How did the Jewish Lag BaOmer lay out on some popular 2015 lunar festal calendars? Now, do remember that the Jews traditionally use a lunar festal calendar as well. And will this solve some of the problems for the counterfeit count of Torah's wave sheaf? So 2015 is the year that we're going to look at. I found some posters for May of 2015, and you can see that the first one, actually, if you look up the address, this is a poster for Los Angeles. And then there's another poster here. You can look at it. It's got quite a bit of celebration here. They've both got basically, now they have, looks like they have different dates, but remember that May 6th is when it begins and May 7th is the actual day. Tim, can you take over on this slide for me?
Lag BaOmer is a huge Jewish celebration. The internet is emphatic about this festive day on the Jewish calendar. It's amazing the amount of internet coverage there was for May 7, 2015 Lag BaOmer, which is the 33rd day of the Omer count for 2015. Every year, this celebration is attended with much fanfare for who? Rashbi, the great what? The great mystic sage. Should this terminology raise a flag for us? Should it get our attention? A great mystic sage on the anniversary of his death? Should we be paying attention to this? Should we be calculating our calendar by this information? There is more.
Absolutely, we do need to pay attention because Lag BaOmer is very popular. It's not just for Israel, it's all over the world. I just collected a few posters in 2015, and I bet this year there's even more than this. But here's another poster. It's from New York City. You can just look at it. You can see these dates, May 6 and May 7 are going to come up. But this other poster, Kabbalah for the Masses, it's very interesting. I want you to look in this red box here. They've been advertising this since December 18th to 19th, well in advance, so that nobody ever forgets it. And you can see that, I don't know if you can read it here at the very, very bottom, but it is actually saying that it is excellence in the study and teaching of Kabbalah and Jewish spirituality. You know what? I don't want to have anything to do with that. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know that it is a worldwide celebration all over the United States, all over the world, especially in Israel. Well, how in the world did Rashbi get, and all this stuff about Rashbi, get connected to the wave sheaf? Well, you already heard that in the year that Rashbi died, the Jews, no, you didn't hear this. I'm going to take this back. I'm going to say that in the year that he died, they could have been celebrating the wave sheaf on the exact proper day according to Moses and Joshua. Actually, wave sheaf that year, I haven't gone and checked it out, but it could have been on the first day of the week according to those instructions. And there is some historical evidence about that. Therefore, if that was the case, the 33rd day of the Omer count really would be the 18th day of the second month, and it would be for that day only, that year only. Remember that Rashbi died on the 33rd day of the Omer count, and that just happens to be a very interesting mystical number. So for nearly 1860 years, Rashbi has been honored as a saint on every 33rd day of the Omer count. This day always links back to Abib 16 as wave sheaf, even if it isn't the true wave sheaf. Yes, it is true that Rashbi's death changed the correct timing of wave sheaf. This is how wave sheaf became permanently tied and married to Abib 16. In that year, like I said, wave sheaf could have been correctly located on Abib 16 on a Sunday, the first day of the week. And when wave sheaf is married to Abib 16, it does not fall on the first cycle every single year. It will about once every 6 or 7 years. And since that time, the 33 days are always counted back to the date of Abib 16, so that Rabbi's death would always be celebrated on the 18th day of the second month. Now, does it sound to you that this Rashbi is getting more attention than Yehusha? It kind of does to me. However, this event not only became a problem, but now it is widely accepted. It is an accepted counterfeit, just like sunset is a counterfeit for creation's day start. So we all need to be willing to challenge every single teaching, and we need to see if these traditions really are true or not. Like, are they linking with Torah, with Moses and Joshua? And if they're not, then we need to get rid of them. So the question is, should covenant Torah keepers observe this Omer count 33 called Lag BaOmer? I'm saying absolutely no. This Jewish holiday It is not a Torah command. It is derived entirely from rabbinic and occultic tradition. Everything about this celebration is linked to the mystical writings of Kabbalah. Now, the other thing is, if you do a little bit of study on Rashbi, he didn't even acknowledge Yahusha as the Messiah. He had nothing to do with Yahusha. And what about Kabbalah? It is a deceptive system of thought that seduces people into denying that they are sinners in need of salvation. In fact, the Kabbalists believe that each of us are divine. That's all, we're already there. So there is no need of a savior. Everybody is pure, and they just need to be enlightened through the mystical worship of Lucifer. Tim, can you go ahead and take over for me?
Certainly. It is clear the traditional wave sheaf linked to Abib 16 has strong ties to Kabbalistic ways, including mysticism and all associated links to the Jesuits and secret societies. So, question: why are so many so-called Torah feast keepers honoring Abib 16 when this date is widely connected to such mysticism? Who is being honored here, as Charlene asked? Is Yahusha being honored, or is man being honored? What doctrine is being put over and above that of the Torah? Maybe these people just don't know, but let's tell them. The word needs to go out. They need to understand where they have gone wrong. Lag BaOmer definitely counterfeits the true meaning of wave sheaf. Yahusha did not ascend to heaven on any day of the week except for the first cycle. That would be following the seventh-day Sabbath. And that is exactly what is written in the scriptures. Should honest Torah keepers sever their connection to a yearly Abib 16 wave sheaf? And we say, absolutely, yes, beyond any shadow of doubt. Because we like to follow the Torah and the Torah only. We're not into man's tradition. Does that mean the Wave Sheaf Festival is never on Abib 16? No, it doesn't. There is no rule that Wave Sheaf can never occur on Abib 16. If Passover is on Friday, Abib 14, then Abib 15 is the seventh-day Sabbath and the unleavened bread Shabbat. Therefore, Abib 16 celebrates Wave Sheaf on the day after the weekly Shabbat, as given in the scripture. Many feast keepers and ministries have Wave Sheaf married to Abib 16. What do we mean by married? We are stating that it must always be, without exception, on Abib 16. We do not find that in the scriptures. It behooves us to wonder how they missed the clear instructions from the Torah. Would that be because they study the Talmud instead? So what is the result? The wave sheaf on Abib 16 becomes a floating date on the calendar, demanding Pentecost is also located to a floating date. The question I have, did your Messiah, your Mashiach, your Kohen HaGadol, did he observe the wave sheaf to become the first fruit on a floating date? Did he observe it through the week? Or did he fulfill the plan of his father magnificently by observing the wave sheaf and becoming the first fruit on the first day after the seventh-day Sabbath? That's the question we need to decide here. On the next slide, let's examine a calendar from a Christian feast ministry with their wave sheaf First Fruits Festival married to Abib 16.
Yes, I'll try to show you this in 2 slides. We know about this feast camp. They're wonderful people. They love Yahusha. They're teaching feasts and festivals to many all around the world. We love them dearly. So this is what their calendar looked like in 2015. And the question is, how will following this Christian feast calendar compare to the traditional Jewish calendar for 2015? So you can see here in 2015, they have their unleavened bread here. Of course, their first fruits is going to be right here. Unleavened bread is the 15th, okay? So they're going to start at sunset. Don't forget that. Their count starts here at sunset because this is a camp that believes that the day commences with sunset. So we just need to do some counting here to see what's going to happen. Yes, they count this 1 to 7 days, this full week. They get a whole week here because they start here on Sunday with their count, and then they have 8 to 14 count. They have a count of the Omer from 15 to 21 in this week of April, and from April 26 to 30, your Omer count has come up from Omer count 22 to 26. So they're counting just fine. But what we're looking for is, will day 33 of the Omer count land on Thursday, May the 7th, 2015, exactly like the Jewish calendar? And by the way, not just the Jewish calendar, but according to those posters that we saw that are posted all over the world. So let's look for an answer here. We've got our Omer count up here. Let's just follow it through. We have days 27 and 28 here. And here we have Omer 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 35. But look what happens. Do you see? What is this? May the 7th, 33rd day of the Omer count. This Christian feast calendar does favor Lag BaOmer, which begins at sunset on May the 6th. So May 7th is their 33rd day of the Omer count. Christian feast keepers that follow this Jewish calendar, I really believe they likely do not know that the 33rd day of the Omer count actually is paying respect to the great mystic sage Rashbi. And I'm just wondering that when they find out, perhaps they will celebrate the Wave Sheaf First Fruits Festival according to the instructions of Moses and Joshua. It's like such a sadness to be able to see such a wonderful camp sharing feasts and festivals with people all around the world. And I guess we just have to go and tell them, right, Tim? But anyway, this is the piece that you've all been waiting for. This endorsement from Morgenstern at the Hebrew Union College in Indiana. And he has done some wonderful, wonderful work in calendar. Tim has shown us many things about that. But let's read his quote. This is what he has to say. Actually, the legislation for bringing of the Omer, the first sheaf of the new annual crop, is recorded in only one passage of the entire Pentateuch, Leviticus 23, 9 to 16. This legislation provides that the Omer is to be waved before Yahweh by the priest upon the day following the Sabbath. The basic difficulty here is the determination of the precise dating implicit in the term the day after the Sabbath. Remember, that's what we've been talking about. And then he says the customary interpretation that is accepted by most present-day biblical scholars is that the Sabbath here is the Sabbath which falls within the week of the Passover Matzot festival. Isn't that interesting what he has to say? Such too was the interpretation given of old to this term by three quite ancient Jewish sects, the Samaritans, the Boethicians, and the Karaites. They used to believe this. This would imply, of course, that the day of bringing the Omer, look what he says, always a Sunday. And also, since the counting of the 50 days, which intervened between the day of bringing the Omer and the Shavuot festival, commenced upon a Sunday. The latter festival also would always fall upon a Sunday. This is from Morgenstern. He's a very well accepted, well known, and well loved scholar. But he gave the history of what was actually happening quite some time ago. And I say to you, yes, this is really interesting history. Tim, would you give us a brief review of this?
Certainly. Waiting for the slide to come up. There it is. Besides history, Morgenstern's testimony and the witness in the Exodus 12, 16, and 19 account of Passover to Pentecost. And number 13, Joshua also confirms that Wave Sheaf is not married to Abib 16, the day following the first Sabbath of unleavened bread. Joshua is ultra clear on that when you study those details deeply. And he confirms that Wave Sheaf is always placed within the Passover festival, and that is contrary to Enoch's teaching. And that is what we teach, that the wave sheaf is always placed within the Passover festival. Why do we teach that? Because we stick with the words in the scripture as they are written.
Exactly. And we also teach that because there's some counsel from the Apostle Paul in Ephesians 5, 8 to 13. Listen what he has to say. For you were once in darkness, but now you are light in Yahuwah. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to Yahuwah. And he says, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. And we do believe that this Joshua study is actually exposing these counterfeits in a very, very grand way. Then he goes on to say, for it is shameful even to speak of those things, which are done by them in secret. And who was Rashbi? In the Kabbalah and the secret societies. But all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light, for whatever makes manifest is light. I think Paul gave us some counsel that is really important. We need to always remember it. You know, if Yahuwah said it's to our honor and glory to search out his riches, we need to do it. We need to expose it. And it's not always comfortable, but it does need to be done. But we do understand that it's very possible that there's a lot of people that don't understand this and they are in complete darkness and they consistently celebrate Wave Sheaf on Abib 16. They just plain don't know. But along with Leviticus 23 and Joshua and Exodus, and also the gospel account, these studies expose this unfruitful works of darkness magnificently. And once the evidence is brought forth, everybody does have to make a choice. And I do believe that someday that these choices will come to people. They'll have to say, you know, if I'm looking for truth, then I have to make a decision. So let's just compare the evidence as we're going to wrap up. The Wave Sheaf by tradition. When Wave Sheaf is consistently celebrated on Abib 16, it links to a rabbi that gravitated towards the darkness of mysticism and Kabbalah, which has powerful ties to the princes of darkness. But when you celebrate Wave Sheaf by scripture, it is celebrated on the morrow after the weekly Shabbat. It links to our Messiah when he presented himself as the leading first fruit after his resurrection. Wave Sheaf links to that ascension event. It was a powerful victory for his children. This is extremely significant and important because it is one of the most basic events known to man, providing the foundational bone structure of the plan of salvation. And I want to be the first to tell you that Rashbi is not the one that can do this for you. So Wave Sheaf festival choices. Yes, there are festival choices. You can take the choice of the tradition of Abib 16, but I can tell you it's going to fail in comparison. It's going to pale to the Torah truth and to Moses and to Joshua. It is not even going to come close. You have a choice to follow Wave Sheaf that follows on the day after the Shabbat, honoring Yahusha's ascension and a victory for us, or you have a choice to follow it on the unleavened bread Sabbath on Abib 16, honoring Rashbi and Kabbalah mysticism. But you know, according to Joshua, he says, choose you this day whom you will serve. Which master are you going to serve? And again, in closing in 1 Corinthians, what does Yahuwah say? He tells us that he is not the author of confusion. He says, let all things be done decently and in order, in perfection, just like every single snowflake is a perfect snowflake. And we would just like to ask that Yahuwah would bless you abundantly in your search for his divine truth and give you shalom. And we are now at the end of our study. And guess what? If there is any questions, you can always send them to questions@studythecalendar.com, and you can review the PowerPoint on the website. And we just thank you so much. And we hope that Wave Sheaf has a lot of significance for you and that you absolutely know why you're celebrating it on the day after the weekly Shabbat. Thank you and shalom.